Hello, everybody. Welcome to Blue Star Rising, the Templar Awakening. And this is Michael Henry Dunn with my wonderful co-host and remarkable friend, Reverend Maia. Hello, Maia. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm doing just great and looking forward to our show.
Okay. Well, this week we are going to focus in more depth on the role of not only the Great Pyramid of Giza, but all of the pyramids on the planet, and how together they fulfill a key role in the preparation of the planet for the Ascension dynamic and event, Life Principle 40. Now, you may remember last time we had a really fascinating combined program with Alan Green, who was doing his presentation on Shakespeare and the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it's not too much to say revolutionary breakthroughs in sacred geometry and mathematics that his discoveries have brought forward. Afterwards, we realized that the subject that Maia was bringing forward is really too vast and profound and important to have covered just in the brief time that we ended up giving it on that program. So the Pyramidis Radius Matrix is the deep subject that she will be sharing with us today. So we have three of Maia's wonderful activational and wisdom sharing videos that we will be sharing during the course of the program today. But Maia, do you want to just give an overview before we start with the first one on the midden chamber of the Pyramidis Radius Matrix and its role in the unfolding of events these days?
Yes. Well, the first video is basically a repeat of the one I used when we had the pyramid video show on with Alan Green that we started the show with. But it needs to be, if we're going to go in this direction with this show, that's the one that needs to come first. I chose for this show three main highlights because there's so much that could be covered with all of this. And one is the midden chamber of the Great Pyramid, which is explained and shown in this video. The second is very, very short, a little video I made on the peacock dancer, and that has to do with the dynamic, the quantum dynamic that Thoth speaks about coming out of the vault of Osiris. I've mentioned it before, but again, we want to get down into this and really, delineate them out in this video. So that little video just leads into our discussion on that. And the third video is really the heart of the subject. It's a basic overview. I call it Pyramidis Radius 101 on the whole dynamic of the pyramid radius. None of these videos are long. This first one, I believe, is about 5-6 minutes. So we'll start with that one. The midden chamber within the temple of the morning star, which is the etheric double of the temple of the risen one, the Great Pyramid of Giza,
is programmed to focus the redemptive light codes inherent in human DNA from the chamber's central point and into the Adonai Kodesh, which then transfers these codes into the greater light programs. These redemptive codes are held within the Adam Kadmon template within the human DNA. Through various catalytic dynamics, such as the midden chamber, these redemptive codes can be reunited with their original form in the seed chamber of divinity within the Godhead. There are souls who have incarnated in genetics which exemplify specific key planetary soul races. When these souls are quickened via the midden chamber, they will then become a biotransmitter for the codes of quickening to be broadcast into the race spirits of the soul races on the planet which they embody. This mass quickening will then further release the redemptive codes of many other souls incarnated upon the earth. However, some of these souls will not respond to this calling because either their systems will be shut down to the Adam Kadmon vibration within their DNA due to excessive denial of spirit, or their DNA will have become too contaminated to receive the signal. The midden chamber of the virtual pyramid or hieropyramid radiates through its core activation the inscription of light for the unification of world systems, in this case those of the earth. Such unification requires full manifestational power to actualize all true heart light stations, turning them on within the greater grid of the earth's DNA cell. This cell is the combined field potential of all living DNA on the earth and the earth's DNA counterpart, which cyclically unfolds from the center of the planet. As the Earth's DNA cell powers up in gradients of synthesis with universal intelligence, the codons within the crystalline field of the DNA are now able to connect to become aware of greater and greater systems of being.
Right. So please enjoy this video and we'll be right back with you. All right, welcome back. So Maia, please share with us a little bit more about what we just saw.
Okay, well, each one of these topics could go on and on, so I have to be careful not to go on and on. But the midden chamber, what that is essentially about, that we're speaking about here, has to do a lot with the DNA and organizing the energy patterning of the etheric current of the planet to connect it to us. Or organizing is not a good word. Maybe I should just say synchronizing between the genetic patterning of the earth with the genetic patterning of the human being. Now, the reason I have to say that is because those speaks about the cosmic DNA. And, you know, what we have in our bodies that the scientists can look at under the microscope, that's just an outer film, very intelligent film that's operating in a lot of multiple dimensions. So I don't mean to minimize it, but it is only the activational part in the human being of a vast system. And that system connects what Thoth calls the cosmic DNA. Exactly where that origin is, I don't know. Maybe it's non-local. But it's with the center of the earth, the atoma of the planet, the central sun of the earth, which contains an energy aspect of that DNA frequency. See, it's frequency, it's all frequency. And in our bodies, we have something that's actually physical, but it really contains a frequency set. And that set is connected to all of this other vast, much more vast system. So apparently the midden chamber in the Great Pyramid, which is basically an empty resonating chamber that connects to the actual midden chamber in the Temple of the Morning Star, which has this Hieropyram virtual system in it. It's almost like talking about a giant computer, in a way. And so that system in the midden chamber is helping to remodulate the frequency between us and the universal DNA patterning, cosmic universal patterning, which of course involves connecting us to Gaia more succinctly as well. Excuse me. So why is that? Well, because we've lost our patterning. Not entirely, obviously. We've got 5 fingers and 10 fingers, not 5, 10 fingers and 10 toes. But at the same time, we have lost that synchronization of energy patterning that goes on between us, the planet, and the cosmos. It's somewhat there, but it's, kind of going like this. So the purpose of building these pyramids, multiple purposes, but basically the core purpose is to align things. When, it was seen that everything was out of alignment a long time ago before we reached this point. So when they were constructed, it was to align, to prepare for transportation from world system 1 to world system 2, not in spaceships, but in energy and frequency. So that's why I feel the midden chamber is so important in this scenario. It also, when speaking about the DNA and all of that, well, I'm going to pause for a minute, Michael. I could go on and on. I'm going to come back to that. But first, Mid, do you have anything you want to say about what I just said?
Well, I think it would be good to let people know that within the physical structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza, most people are familiar with the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, the Great Gallery, etc. And that the midden chamber is not something that is known to archaeology at this point, and in your receiving it's actually quite small as a cavity in the core of the pyramid near the top.
Toward the top. It's about, it's not right at the top, but it's, let's say if this is the middle of the pyramid, it's about right there. And here's the capstone up here. So it's kind of like there. And it's very small. I don't know how small is small. I don't mean it's like bigger. It's bigger than a bread box, but it's big enough for a person to stand in it if they wanted to, even a tall person. But it's not big. It's like a very, very small little room. And it's a resonating chamber that it connects to the actual midden chamber, the one that has more involved with it inside the more etheric Temple of the Morning Star. When we speak of things as etheric, we don't mean that it's like, how do I describe it? Oh, well, it's really not here. It's sort of off in this cloudy place. No, there are many dimensions that we could call etheric. And when we're speaking of the Morning Star, we're speaking of something that has a very real, directive, organized energy, and it has objects in it, but objects that are on a higher vibration than we can be aware of in our senses when we're existing here. However, if you were able to just lift your vibration a little bit and you went into that chamber, you would be able to touch it, because your vibration would match it. So and let me tell a quick story. It's very short, but I'm borrowing it from my ex, Simeon, because he told me about when he went to Egypt the first time. Of course, he and I went there conducting a tour for Thoth, not a tour, but activational facilitation in 1995, 6. Yeah, 1995. But previous to that, and I'm not exactly sure when, in the early some years before, Simeon went there, another tour that he was just in as part of the tour. And he had an experience where he and a friend, they were naughty. They didn't stay with the tour, and they went down to an area that says "keep out," and it was the tunnel. There's a big pit. Into this big pit. They call it the pit. You know, the tour guys will take you up there, down there, and they'll say just to the where the sign is. Or this was in those days. I don't know what they've done now. And they say, "Oh, down there is the pit," you know, but you weren't able to go there. It said keep out. But it was just a little sign and a little string. So, you know, he and his friend they went in. They went down there. So they got down there, and it's just pitch black. There's nothing there. You know, you're just sitting in this hollowed out chamber. It's not the midden chamber, but it's another interesting one, you can bet. Anyway, they were sitting down there, and they were like, you know, oming. They were oming, chanting, you know, and not before too long. I don't know exactly how long it took, but not long. And everything's so pitch black, you can have your eyes open, and you think your eyes are closed. And Simeon and the other person too, I believe it was a woman, they both started seeing lights flashing in the room. They had their eyes open, and it was like electrical flashes, you know, like somebody like with a flint or something, only it was sort of a bluish color, I believe. So they saw all of this for some time. And then all of a sudden, boom, Simeon was not in there. He was not there. He was someplace else, and he didn't even know where he was. But wherever he was, there was this big antenna coming out of something. And then he looked around, and he was looking down, and he realized he was on top of the pyramid. And he was looking, he could see everything down there, just as clear as if, you know, you're physically there. And it didn't last long, and then he was back in the body. So he had never, at that time, he didn't realize there was an antenna on top of the pyramid. He didn't know that. But he later found out that that was the case.
And it's
so
an etheric. Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, it's
That's an etheric antenna.
No, I mean a real antenna. You know, they have some kind of an antenna up there. Yeah, which is kind of interesting in itself. You know, what are they doing with that antenna up there? But they did have a physical antenna on top of the Pyramid of Giza at that time that he went up there and saw it. But he didn't know it was there. I mean, he saw it with his etheric vision or his etheric body, because he said it was just real as anything. He didn't even know it wasn't real. I mean, it wasn't physically real.
Yeah.
He was totally disoriented. I was here and now I'm here, you know? And so it was quite something. But I bring that story up because the way things work, you know, if you were sitting inside the midden chamber in the temple of the risen one, which is what Thoth calls the Pyramid of Giza, even though it's, you know, the Pyramid of Giza at this point is you know, kind of wounded, it's still functional to a degree because it's still connected to the temple of the morning star. That's what keeps it going in this sort of dilapidated state, comparatively speaking. So if you're sitting in the midden chamber, the one in Giza, you know, in the pyramid, you would be able to, getting into the right space rather easily, because it wasn't that difficult for them, to be able to be transported into the temple of the morning star in the midden chamber of that pyramid. And this is the kind of thing that it was used for, among other things. You don't have to be in there for it to work, but you know, that was one of the things that they did. And you see it's sealed off, so there's no door. So they had to first transport into that. And then they had to transport into the other. It's initiatory staging, you know.
Now, let me ask you, you know, for those who follow Egyptology and archaeology, a couple of years ago, a team, it might have been from Japan, I'm not entirely certain, used a unique scanning device that had not been used before, actually having to do, I think, with interstellar particles that pass through the Earth and can be measured.
I remember that.
They used it to scan the pyramid to see if there were any other cavities or spaces within the pyramid that had not been discovered. And they did find one. Are you aware of this, of what they found?
Yeah, now what I read about that was after I'd received the information about the midden chamber. And when I read about it, you might refresh my memory here and our listeners, but I wasn't sure whether it was or not, but refresh my memory on that. See what you have to say about
Yeah,
that.
I will. Before the end of the program, I'll have that information. But
Okay.
it's comparatively small. And it may, in fact, be what you're describing. It's certainly worth, checking into.
Yeah, I really should. I don't think I did at the time. For some reason, I was distracted and I didn't get back to it. But yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can tell you right now that it was cosmic rays from space allowed scientists to detect a mysterious 4,000-year-old cavity deep in the Great Pyramid. International team of scientists recently discovered this. And in terms of, let me put my glasses on, just so we can, because it's certainly an interesting sidelight on this. They used muon tomography. It's non-intrusive. And so the discovery still awaits confirmation using more traditional techniques that involve minimally invasive drills and flashlights, etc. So as to where this is located, they used these detectors in the Queen's chamber to create a computer simulation of these muon particles going through the pyramid to predict what they should see and then compare it with what they actually saw. So what they were able to do, but this newly discovered cavity is above the Grand Gallery. And because the muon signal is as intense as the Grand Gallery itself, the scientists suggest that it might be of similar dimensions, about 150 feet long, 28 feet wide, 7 feet wide. So anyway, actually, I was wrong. That turns out to be rather large. As to whether, it could also be structural. They're speculating, designed to release the Grand Gallery of the stress of the huge amount of weight that lies above it. But anyway, that is that's the story on that.
Well, Thoth has said to me before that there's several cavities in that structure, and they would not necessarily all be easy to find by such means because of the way that they were created in the energy fields that they project. So, as our technology becomes more advanced, perhaps we'll be able to discover them all. But it's not a matter of just taking sort of an X-ray of muons or whatever and you find them all. It's a little more dicey than that. Also, there are many, way down underneath the pyramid, where you think the pyramid ends, down there, and that's where the Vault of Osiris is, which we'll discuss after this next video.
Okay. Do you receive anything you want to share at this point on? Now, when we're looking at the big picture here, I think it'll help people as we move through this. We're looking at the big picture of the purpose of the pyramids all over the planet in the Pyramidis Radius Matrix, which has this activational, facilitative role for the new Earth, right? And that there were these master builders of the Sunbow clan, right? And have you had any light shed on how, for example, the Great Pyramid of Giza actually was built?
Yes, actually it was, well, we have to go back to good old Thoth. Now, he has had two, according to what I received, he has had 2 lifetimes as the Thoth. Now, Thoth is a title, but not a title like some, political title or anything like that. This is a title, a descriptive title. And we could go into that sometime when we actually have a whole show on Thoth. Wouldn't that be fun? But right now, we're just going to say that it's a descriptive title. So the first, he was here twice, is that. The first Thoth came in a starship, Merkaba, whatever. He actually came from the blue star to here. And he calls it Thoth Muzurud. And as Thoth Muzurud, he came, according to Thoth, with the template, the blueprints, the design for not just one pyramid, but for many structures. And he wasn't overseeing all of them. That would have been quite a task because they were built through the ages. But he overseed several, and I was never told what other ones, but one of the ones, the major one in the sense of Thoth's objective, was what we know as the pyramidal complex of Giza, Great Pyramid and its satellite pyramids. So he brought the blueprint that actually, is the emerald table, not tablets, but table. When it's an energy field, but it was put together as a table with the tablets in them. In other words, this is kind of emerald stone tablets that were incised like a circuitry. It was a circuitry, let's just face it, and you put all these circuits together and you have the whole table, the whole computer. So that's the emerald table. And so anyway, he was the overseer, and he had the table and he had everything going for him, and the workers did the work, but he was the one that overseed it. And I imagine that, because he was here as part of or had the Sunbow clan, the Sunbow master builders under him. So the master builders put the thing together, but he was the one that brought the template and oversaw it. And then when Thoth Racemus was born, that's the same soul, now this time born into an earthly body in the Himalayas, or what passed for that then. And he had all the blue star genetics and all kinds of genetics in him, in human as well. And of course, we know the story about the On, sacred On, and the art, all of that went on. But when he came back to Egypt, it was after the, he didn't come, I'm sorry, let me start over. He was in Atlantis, so he went to Egypt. Now, I believe he actually went to Egypt before the catastrophe, but he was there to reassemble, for reconstruction of the Great Pyramid and its satellite pyramids at that time. So he still had the templates, he still had the wherewithal to do that, and he oversaw it again because he was recognized as the same being. He didn't have to convince people, oh, I'm the same guy that did this, No, he was known to be the same person. So he was able to have the reconstruction at that time.
And so this would be approximately 12,000, 13,000 years ago, when a lot of dovetailing historical records indicate there was a deluge, and
yes, around that time, yes,
the time tsunami, as it's called, around the fall of Atlantis.
Yes.
So that is a restoration of the Giza complex, and particularly the Great Pyramid, to its full functionality, where it had been originally constructed like another 20,000 years earlier.
Yes, something like that. I don't recall at this moment that I've ever been given dates exactly to when the pyramids were built, only for when they were reconstructed, but I'm not sure about that. Please forgive me, but I'm dealing with 53 years of work, and written material. So
don't want to like hold you. No, that's all right. Don't want to hold you to that. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to, catch up on some of that mainstream archaeology news, recast the historical understandings. So, for those of our viewers who, are just familiar with the Khufu story of, 4,500 years ago, with not having invented the wheel, they just whipped this thing together. So, all right, are we ready to watch the next video, the peacock dancer? Do you want to introduce this a little bit?
Right. Yeah. The peacock dancer one, as I said, this really just sort of brings us into the topic of the vault of Osiris and the energy dynamic that will take place that sets off the actual final working of light principle 40 on the planet. It's the engine that takes us through that phase. Now, see, it's important to understand that the light principle 40 is a natural sequencing of events that is part of a much larger dynamic. It's not just us. It's the bigger dynamic of how things work in this universe and the holographic fields that are built into this universe. No, aliens didn't build this universe. God built it. And if you want to call God, what is God? But it's the universal divine synchronization of consciousness that's beyond anything we can imagine. Okay, let's just say that. Well, whatever it is, it's beyond a bunch of aliens. And it's beyond the ultra beings that are helping us to do this. But the thing is, we got so off track. The beings that are helping us and overseeing this bigger picture said, whoa, we better do something about this. So they came down and did the Pyramidis Radius, which not the Pyramidis Radius exactly, but the pyramids that would become part of that field in the future, which is now. And they did other things like, the Pyramid of Giza with the midden chamber and all of this. So what they did was they created these particular engines to help us at certain points. Okay, now this is gonna happen. We're gonna organize this energy to help the earthlings be able to tune into this and move through this frequency. So that's what the Vault of Osiris is about, connected to so many other things. And we'll get into it a little more after you see the very short video.
Okay, and I do just want to mention, that the video you're about to see shares, important messages of sacred science in a very beautiful setting of the second life, heightened digital reality, we'll call it, and that then there is a passage of sacred music and dance for a couple of minutes as well. So it's a very beautiful video, and we will watch it now.
As the Osiris dynamic, activated by the great soul of that being, penetrates the violet ray into the center space of the vault of Osiris, beneath the temple of the Risen One, or Great Pyramid of Giza, so he, Osiris, the Risen One, he who offers up the light of Yeshua, Jesus, on the cross, will then ascend through the violet flame into the higher heaven of the 8th octave, as the fire star Kachina, carrying all the Kokopelli codes back to the greater creatrix. This act, the process outlined by Thoth here, of ascending through the violet flame, is the dance of the fire star Kachina. I am the Osirim peacock dancer, the fire star of the 8th house with the 12 pillars. The shimmer of my star feathers reveals the eye of Horus, the son of suns. It is through his eye of perfection and light that the 144,000 shall pass into the realm of splendor.
Well, Maya, that last image in the video of, what looks like a great crypt, such as we see in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, is that meant to represent that?
Yes, it's something I found on the web, and it's quite beautiful. So I don't have any real pictures, so I use that one. Yeah, yeah. So the the vault of Osiris, the core vault of Osiris, and I'll explain what I mean in a minute, is way beneath when I say way beneath, not in the inner earth or anything, but it's not just right under this. You'd have to dig a ways if you wanted to get to it. But it's under the Great Pyramid. Now, I received about this vault many years ago, like in the 80s, probably 90s. I don't remember exactly when it first came in. And just in the last few years, they've discovered this, what they're calling maybe a sarcophagus of Osiris or something. I don't know what they base it on, and it's under there, but it's not far enough under there. But I asked them, well, what is this? Because it's just a, it's a false, almost like a false chamber, and then you see this big old black sarcophagus thing in there, and I don't think there's anything in it. As I recall, it's very mysterious, and there's like, what is this doing here? But that is a keynote field. It's like the actual sarcophagus core has various false, not false, but pseudo sarcophagi in different locations. They found another one in some other place. They say, maybe this is it. I don't know how many there are, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, probably as many as 4. And it's not the real one, but it's not a false one. I shouldn't have said that, because it is energetically connected. It's kind of like, again, some kind of circuitry. But the one that is way under there is the real one. And that contains, I don't know all that it contains. It doesn't contain, it probably contains a, as I'm trying to remember now, a body of Osiris, but not a decayed or mummified body. I think it's probably a suspended body. I say probably, I'm being very nebulous here, because Thoth has never directly told me that, but it has been insinuated, and I really need to find out more about it. But anyway, it has that, but it also has this crystal skull that is the skull of Osiris crystallized. But it's not, I don't think it's like his skull. I think it's a laser version that has, the whole energetic component of it within it. And there are other things in that vault. It's not a tiny vault. It's rather large. It's not just like your normal sarcophagi, which somebody's just lying in. It's very, very big. So it has different things in it that trigger different dynamics, but related dynamics. So the starfire, the dance of the starfire Kachina, the peacock dancer, this has to do with some kind of a vibrational energy that moves up through these devices. And you can call, if there is indeed a suspended body, which I believe there is, you can call that a device. You can call the crystal skull a device. And there are a few other devices. And all of these work together through the powers that have been invested into them to create this field, this vibrational field. And in that, you have a quantum activity taking place. And that is the dance of the starfire Kachina. Now, why Kachina? Because in the material that I have, you'll find a link to that beneath this video. It speaks also about how the Hopi and the Maia are very connected to this whole story. They aren't genetically connected directly, but they're like guardians of some of these energies and frequencies. Thoth speaks of the Kokopelli as being the name for the carrier of the genetic energy from one field of consciousness to another. So when it says in the video, all the Kokopelli codes, gathered up, well, that's what he's speaking about. Now, why is this such symbolic language? Why isn't it just flat out science? I get a lot of things that are just flat out science. But when Thoth speaks in this kind of languaging, this symbolic language that connects to our ancestral memory, you see, that's important. In some instances, in many instances, from the Thothic perspective, it's important for us when we hear these things, through me, him, whatever, that it triggers something in us. Because this is ancestral memory that we all carry. We don't have to be a Hopi or have ever been a Hopi in a past life to carry some of that ancestral memory, because we're all on this earth together. We're all sharing this genetic field. Same thing with the Starfire dancer, the dancing, symbolic of the energies that are taking place. And in fact, he tells me that, back in Atlantis and perhaps Moria, I'm not sure, they had, and maybe very early Egypt, before, the Egyptologists could figure all that out, they had a ceremony, maybe the ceremony changed slightly through the many years, but of a dancer. And he had peacock feathers, and he was dancing this dance. He was symbolically, just like the Hopi have their dances of the the Kachina and the whole story that they tell through dance, a similar type of thing. That's why I chose to make it very artistic and bring in the dancing, because I wanted to imbue the energy field with that kind of flavor, connecting us to the many dancing episodes that have gone on in the past that have connected to this event.
Yeah. For those who have spent time in the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, you'll be familiar with the Kachina and the Kokopelli as links to ancient tribal sacred ceremonies, which of course have been commercialized. You go through Taos, New Mexico, and that is the site of the oldest continually occupied community in North America. For 1,500 years, the Pueblo have been living where they still live in those communities. And then in Arizona, there are still Hopi communities. And of course you see, the Kachina Motor Lodge, and, it's commercialized, and Kokopelli is virtually inescapable. You've got Kokopelli lampshades and Kokopelli electric light switches and Kokopelli dishcloths, and there's a guy I know his house is Kokopelli to death. But anyway, and of course, understandably, the indigenous people don't like this. These are their sacred, symbolic representations of a divine energy. So it might strike some of our viewers as strange. What she's talking about, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and then it's a, Starfire Kachina, and what's this with the Kokopelli? But there is this link, and it also, there's the blue star prophecy, right?
Yes.
Connects to Rigel. So where it all comes back to and makes it relevant for us to share with everybody today is that these energies are being activated now. People are experiencing these activations now. There are, as you'll share in the final video, this is about an activational event which we can consciously choose to participate in, of the Pyramidis Radius Matrix being activated towards the new earth, and it's already done. So, this isn't just merely a fascinating delving into ancient sacred history. It's fascinating that, this being supposedly came 12,000 years ago to repair the Great Pyramid complex to its divine purpose. This is about an activation of all these sacred sites, Pyramid of the Sun in Bosnia and many others. Well, particularly the three that you mentioned in the next video. And that we invite you to, just as this ancestral triggering can happen, when Maia brings in the words, as she did in this last video, of the Kokopelli and of the Kachina, there is the opportunity for us to choose to participate in the awakening of not just our DNA, but our ancestral awareness of this cyclical evolutionary dynamic, we might call it.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah. Is this a good time for us to watch our next video? Is there something else you want to share?
And just one other thing I wanted to bring up, and of course this could open a whole other topic, which we're not going to do in this show, but and we've discussed various levels of it before in other shows, but I wanted to just bring it in for a moment to tie it into this, to remind people the connection. And that is that with all that's going on the planet right now, and we look at the VAX-ing and all of that's taking place, and the purpose of it, the main purpose is to disrupt and to regroup the DNA, so that it will not be viable for this incredible journey. That instead, it will be subsumed, taken in to another field to be used as fuel for that field that is definitely not a place we want to go. So I'm just mentioning that because when you look at the whole picture, DNA comes up in the spiritual context with everything that I've been writing about for so long, way back before, you know, any of this stuff was going on. We're talking about the 70s and the 80s, you know, I mean, before it was consciously going on, that we knew about it. And it's still here, and it's come to pass. The great importance of that, so important that the archonic forces and those who obey those forces, who are drenched in that field, wish to and are actively taking hold of those strands and bringing that field into their direction, in their power structure. Now, as scary as that sounds, we know, and I don't have to tell you this, we know we've got a lot of help on this planet. Why do we have the Pyramidis Radius and all these pyramids and all of this, and the Thoth, and all these beings came to help us then, and they're still with us now in many ways. You know, when you look at this, you know that we're going to make it. We're going to make it through the portal, but it's a rough ride. And we chose to make it this rough, you know, no use blaming ourselves, but it's kind of a fact. We as the humanity, you know. So bearing that in mind and understanding the importance of the frequency of the DNA has nothing to do with racial profiling or bringing one race into another or something. It has to do with all races, all humanity, all animals, all plants, all of it. And it is an equal, I shouldn't try to use a big word, so I'm just going to say it's equal, has equal parts among all. You know, it doesn't leave anyone out. But the DNA frequency is a vibrating, living light that composes our very being. And Thoth mentioned this something to me just the other day that I'm going to bring in very quickly here. And that is, he was speaking, well, I was questioning about something about the inner earth. Of course, you know, I'm really into that again in this part of my life, and recognizing the beings, the humans that live in there, that are part of our races on the surface. And I said, you know, I see a lot of them with tattoos, and then they don't have tattoos, sort of like we are in Second Life. You know, we get to put on our tattoos on our avatar body, but we can take them off anytime and put on another tattoo. And I was seeing them in the inner earth doing that. I mean, they had tattoos and then they didn't, and they had other tattoos. And I was like, what is this? How does this work? Because I know they aren't virtual avatars. So how is this happening? And he said, well, they know how to work the bioluminescence of the body. And that really sparked me when I heard that. And he said, actually, they can't do it as perfectly as beings, star beings, and certain master beings like Thoth could do it. but they have these little machines that they just sort of step into, and for various purposes. The machines do many things, just like our cell phone doesn't do just one thing. And it creates a bioluminescent pattern. The body is literally glowing with this patterning. And it's not just because it's pretty, it is, but it has to do with, aligning ones to a certain geometry or energy function. And then, they can change it. They can put another slide in and have another energy function working in their body. And they also like to do a lot of ceremony, dressing up and doing these beautiful, sacred dances and all this. And they have these tattoos sometimes. So I was fascinated by this. And I said, well, can they glow all over? And he said, yes, but it's important that they don't do it all the time. It can be taxing on the body. So anyway, the reason I brought this up is because this is a quality of he said it's a natural quality of our DNA that can light up the cells in our body, just like the little fishies way down deep in the ocean, that's all dark, and you see the little fish going, go, go, go. And we could do that. And I thought, wow, I want to glow. So, when I think of it in the context of what I'm saying right now, we have so much about ourselves we don't know yet, and the potential of our bodies, even to light up like a light bulb. I just thought that was beautiful. I had to share it.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of, the beloved movie, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, right? So there's this cute little alien, E.T., and he's just going around making plants swell, and E.T. phone home, Elliot, right? And so then of course E.T. gets sick because he's been on Earth too long, and he hasn't been with his buddies, getting rejuvenated, and E.T. is, and then in comes the great nasty government with the big white suits and the hazmat, and they set up a tent inside the family's living room, and E.T. is, and there's Elliot, just, and he's heartbroken because his friend, the alien's dying. And, they don't know. They're just like, what could this, they got this alien, he's on the planet, we got the government, we got to figure out what he is. And so I always thought, for kids watching this, their beloved E.T. is dying, the little boy is crying, is heartbroken, and then some guy in a lab coat bursts onto the scene with a big announcement. And he says, he's got DNA. He's got DNA. Right? So scientists are all excited. And I'm thinking about all the kids who are watching little E.T. die, and they're probably thinking to themselves, man, I don't want to get DNA. That looks really bad. I had the mumps.
Right.
If I get DNA, I'm just going to kill you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it's all in the DNA. That's a library we can't even begin to imagine. As great as we think it is, it's a heck of a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So on to our matrix, Pyramidis Radius. The Pyramidis Radius was actually something more recently introduced to me. By recent, I mean probably 2014, 2015, something like in there. It was introduced to me, and I was like, wow, how come I didn't hear about this before? But that's Thoth. I mean, something really major, and he waits 40 years to tell me. It's like, that's the way it is. And so that's what there's not much to preface it with, because this one is very explanatory, and of course we will talk more about it after you've seen it.
Okay, so here we are, and enjoy the video on the Pyramidis Radius Matrix. that was particularly, I mean, it was so informative and such an overview of everything we've been talking about. I wanted to ask you in particular about the last couple of minutes where you say that the seraphi or seraphi, not sure how
The
it's
seraph,
pronounced,
the seraphi.
seraphi.
Like it's like the seraphim. It's the archangelic beings,
Right,
you know.
seraphim, yeah,
Uh-huh.
will guide us through in a safe passage through the matrix into the awareness of the new earth within us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that the Pyramidis Radius Matrix is, the essential means by which this transformation into the new earth frequency takes place. I think it's interesting, the word matrix has become sort of a negative association because of movies.
I know, and I was given that word to use for many different things long before that movie was made.
I mean, a matrix is more properly understood as well. I'm going to look up the exact dictionary definition before the end of the program, but as a sort of mother source of a creation template.
Exactly, that's the definition.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that the Matrix with the movies with Neo and the rest of it, it is understood as essentially a false created, artificial created matrix for the purposes of sustaining through battery power this AI world, and that it was used as it's a wonderful analogy for duality, delusion, Maya, as they call it in Sanskrit, as you know, and that the Pyramidis Radius Matrix here is used in its original sense as a mother source, a divine template of creation.
Exactly. And the movie Matrix, not to get off on that too much, but the movie Matrix really hits the nail on the head for not exactly, I don't mean every scene, but basically for understanding how the archonic, the invested beings, people, and off-planet people, beings, are attempting to create alternate timelines, alternate matrices, so to speak, timelines, to take us down into box canyons where they have us in this artificial field, because they've taken us away from the sourcing Rana time wave in which our timelines are intended to move. Another huge topic, but that to me is what essentially the Matrix movies were about. Now, I've not even watched a complete Matrix movie. I tried to watch the first one. I watched it a little while, and it was just, I just didn't want to. But they're good. I'm not saying they aren't good, but it just, I didn't want to watch it. But so I can't speak authoritatively on those movies. I'm just saying that the little bit I saw and the little bit I've seen through time, little clips, indicates to me that that's really what that is about. But the Pyramidis Radius, is a whole nother kettle of light.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about where we are now, you're talking about the box canyon, the dead end timeline that those under the sway of the archonic wave, that the box canyon timeline they would like to get us trapped in, that essentially puts our energy to their uses, their agenda, subverts our sovereignty, subverts our divine destiny, subverts, if they could, they would, the whole process of ascension itself. And that, okay, well, how do we do that? How do we avoid the box canyon timeline? And this is something that, because there is so much deliberate confusion being spread now, not only by those who believe their own propaganda, but by those who deliberately and consciously, with cunning deception, interweave falsehood into truth, so that we lap up the truth and it's what we want to hear. And then, I think you said in a message to us, it's like a sandwich. It's got plenty of turkey in there, but then they're lacing in, well, you said mustard. I like to think of like spoiled mayonnaise.
I said that it's got slices of truth, but watch out for the mustard.
I like the mustard personally. I'd rather say sour mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is bad, right? No, thank you.
Yeah.
But that is where we have to develop our own intuition, use our own discernment, develop our discrimination, and try to keep things simple somehow, so that we can remember who we are, so that we can remember our core values, so that, this is the trickiest thing right now, the divisiveness, the deliberate tribalization. Well, I'm trans and I'm black, well, and I'm white, and you're racist and you're bigoted. Now, this does not excuse police brutality. Police reform is needed. This doesn't excuse any of it, but the deliberate tribalization to make men suspect women feel distrustful, to make heterosexuals distrustful of homosexuals, to make, transgender people, some weird alien frightening other thing, to make, if you go out into the so-called alternative journalism out there, you will find so much deliberate disinformation that is meant to divide us. Every time that you look, and there'll be some website and it'll present all kinds of truths about what's going down, about the inside jobs and this or that catastrophe and false flags, etc. And then it'll go, by the way, it's the Jesuits, right? It's the Jesuits, those evil Jesuits.
They tack on what they want to really sell you.
Another website will go, it's the Zionists. It's like, it's the Vatican, right? Oh, it's like, it's the Masons. It's the Templars. The Jesuits are the Illuminati. Oh, no, the Jews are the Illuminati. On and on. Well, guess who's behind that, folks? The real bad guys who want to keep us mistrusting each other, keep us calling each other names, and the fact is, those good heritages, legacies, organizations, every one of them has much great good and spiritual truth in it, and every one of them's been infiltrated. Every one of them has a 5 to 10% that is cabal, that is Luciferian, that is quite likely involved in the elite pedophile rings. They do their best to infiltrate and pollute every good human organization. Don't be fooled. Human beings are good at heart, and that's what they want us to forget. And they want us to forget everything that unites us, our core common values. We want a nice life for our children. We want to be able to pursue the work that's meaningful to us. We want clean water. We want good food. We want air and sunshine. And we don't want to be bombarded with rays that are dumbing us down, that are rendering us sterile, that are creating, go to 5G-KNOW.com, 5G-KNOW.com, or ehtrust.org, Environmental Health Trust, ehtrust.org, children'shealthdefense.org. All these excellent websites give hard science on what's really happening and what the agenda behind it is. But all we need to do to pass through into this higher frequency, if we can keep our frequency high in the vibrations of hope and love and faith and compassion, and remember what unites us and not be distracted by all of the confusion, if we can somehow find a meditation path that allows us to do that, and then that's the magic. I mean, I know we keep talking about this, Maia, that with all of these amazing aspects of sacred science and the Pyramidis Radius Matrix and the lighting up of these long dormant pyramids to help us move through this, it is so important for this stream of knowledge to go out into the world. And the ultimate trigger is the heart activation within each one of us. The ultimate trigger is the frequency of love and compassion. And, you know, speaking as a Templar, there are those of us who have sacred warrior dharma and whose sacred duty it is to defend and protect the innocent, and which sometimes means wielding the sword of justice, or, you know, whatever is necessary to protect those who cannot protect themselves. So that's what I keep coming back to when I see these beautiful truths coming forward.
Yes, well said, Michael. To look at the dynamic of the Pyramidis Radius for a minute, and I apologize, but I have some cat fur in my eye.
Oh,
when you live with
we're weeping.
Four cats, you know, it's an occupational hazard. So anyway, looking at the way the Pyramidis Radius works, as it was explained there, but I'd like to just punctuate this for a moment. It's not a place to go. It's a frequency in which to abide. And you don't have to do something fancy to get there. We're all just gradually, naturally moving into that frequency, unless we're doing really bad things. If we're just living a good enough, you know, a good life, and we're trying our best, and we're, you know, and we're able to be introspective and see where we need to maybe make some changes in our life to make it a little better, you know, and we're doing the best we can with it. And honestly, from our hearts, we are being embraced by the Pyramidis Radius. And because the actual physical pyramidal dynamics of it, the engine is just that. It's just an engine. What really is running the matrix is the heart frequency and where we are in that spectrum. What's been set up on the planet with the pyramids and everything is just helping us, you know, get it even, like, you know, in the sights, and bring it together. It's helping us unify that energy, because we've lost the ability to really do that. Otherwise, that wouldn't be needed either. So it's helping us to get this accomplished. And to keep it from being too much of a make bad on us, we have to realize, even though we opened the door and let the archonic cloud attach to us as a virus, we did so very kind of innocently for the most part. And once it's here, it's not a guest that you can say, okay, you stayed a couple of nights now, I think you need to hit the road, Jack. It's like, nope, I like it. The bed's comfy, the food's good, I'm staying put. And so, you know, it's not leaving, and not yet. So we have a situation here, and it's not an isolated instant in the universe, believe me, where our guardian beings, the Seraphi and the light beings and the star masters, whatever you want to call them, the luminaries, the inner earth, all of these beings are helping us to do what we can't quite do by ourselves. It reminds me of Moses when he was, you know, holding up his staff so the people could go across the Red Sea, and he was getting very tired. So his brother comes along and holds his arms up for him, you know, helps him so he can hold the rod. And actually it was a dynamic rod that was actually parting the waters. It's like they're holding up our arms for us. They're helping us to do the job that we came to do, and that we know how to do in our intrinsic nature, but we just don't quite have the muscle strength now that we did at one time. And so that's why they're doing it that way. So we're moving into this matrix in a very natural way, actually. This pyramid, this radius, I really should call it is a matrix, but the emphasis is on the word radius, because it's a radial field that's enveloping us and that's bringing us into this positive attraction to our own spiritual being. And some years ago, but it was it was at least 2 years after I received about the Pyramidis Radius. And one of the things it tells is how these pyramids are going to form. When we're really into the matrix, you know, into the radius, these pyramids are going to start forming. First, they're going to be sort of holographic. You can see them, and then they disappear, and you see them, and then they disappear. And then finally, they start being physical enough that we can actually go into these pyramids. Each one is a frequency that's different, and it help align us and bring us into it's preparing us for LP40. They're going to be masters that can come among us to work with us. So anyway, about 2 years after I received all of that, I'm watching YouTube. I tried to find it. I know I saved it somewhere, but I couldn't find it for the show. But this guy's out there by the Pacific Ocean, and he's filming something, and you can tell this is genuine. The guy's freaking out. I mean, and his camera's wobbling and everything. And you can see, he says, look at this. You know, he's holding up his camera and right over the ocean. And Thoth had shown how many of them will appear on the ocean. In my picture, I had it in the water. And there's a pyramid forming. I mean, there it is. It's not like Giza. It's kind of a light pyramid. You kind of see through it, and there it is. It's forming. And all of a sudden, it's just as real as anything. He said, look at that. You know, he's really freaking out. And above it, and he doesn't even mention this, but you can see it very clearly. There are these little light ships. These little ships are going, you know, like we were used to seeing. They're up there. I don't think he even mentions that. He's so focused on this pyramid. And so you're watching it, and then all of a sudden, it just sort of disappears, and it's not there anymore. And then the video ends. I think he passes out or something. But I was really taken with that, because I was thinking, when he first told me about this, there's going to be pyramids appearing somewhere, you know. It just seems so out there. And here's this guy filming one of them. So how many others are coming in and out in places? Maybe they don't see them at the time with the camera. Maybe they do, and I just haven't found the videos. But let's be on the lookout for that, because I truly believe that's what he was seeing and filming.
Yeah. Well, especially this weekend, right? Because according to some people, Western scientists got the Mayan calendar all wrong. They were 8 years off, and December 21st, 2012 is actually meant to happen June 21st, 2020, or next Sunday. So I don't know.
I haven't had any word on that from Thoth, but however, he's always said to me way back in, when was it, 1985, was it? I think it was, but I'm not sure. I'm not good at numbers, but 80-something, 85 for sure. He said that was actually the year 2000. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, if you count, see, he says that Jesus was born a different time, 15 years before they say he was. I know, very controversial. I've never heard anybody say that before. I almost didn't put it in my periodical, because, you know, you kind of want to go with the flow. But that's what he said, so I put it in there. So according to that, and I said, wow, well, okay, we're doing our 2000 thing. And he said, not really, because humanity doesn't recognize it until this time. When humanity recognizes it and says, oh, it's the year 2000. Oh, it's the year 2012. And they get their consensual reality geared up to that, that's when it really happens, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Yeah, after
all, it's only a date on a calendar in a way. I know they're cosmic alignments, but you know, we're creating our universes in a way. I mean, it's pretty far out, but that's kind of what he seems to indicate. Up,
maybe some in our audience have heard me say it before, the original event like that, the first one that got wide attention, was the so-called harmonic convergence in August of 1987. Jose Agres was had done the calculations that there's this huge wave of energy coming in, and it'll be transformative if we can get 500,000 people to meditate or pray on that date as these energies are coming in. Well, this is before the internet, to August of 87. So it kind of spread, via radio, TV, newspapers, and there was kind of this movement. And, that was, as the New Age, so-called, was, beginning to be recognized as such, the Shirley MacLaine era of the 80s. And so the day came, the day went, a bunch of people got together, as well, is the sky going to fall? Well, no, it's just that the world could change if we all get together, 500,000 people. So I often like to tell people, when we're talking about things like mass consciousness, mass meditations, what happened on December 21st, 2012, did enough people feel something real was happening to focus their consciousness and help create in the quantum realm a change? Well, if Jose Arguelles had gotten on the radio or TV a week or so before the harmonic convergence in August of 87. And he had said, if we can only get 500,000 people to meditate together as these energies come in, I predict, boldly predict right now, that within 5 years, the Iron Curtain will dissolve. Eastern Europe will be freed. Germany will be reunited. The Berlin Wall will fall. The Soviet Union will peacefully dissolve. The Cold War will end. Václav Havel will be released from prison and become the president of free Czechoslovakia. Nelson Mandela will be released from prison and become the president of a free South Africa. Lech Wałęsa will be released from prison and become the president of a free Poland. All this will happen within 5 years if only we can all meditate together today. I was very well aware geopolitically in 1987, and every single one of those things was a laughingstock idea. Impossible, never could happen, unthinkable. And within 5 years, every single one of those things had happened. So we're in an accelerated timeline. I like to think that if we all can just focus on what unites us, find our meditation practice, stay in a high frequency of hope and compassion, and while remembering justice and defending those who can't defend themselves, we can be in that vibration and anything's possible.
It is. And indeed, many things happen that we have no idea that they've happened, because Thoth has said that we change our past all the time. Not hugely, incrementally. By what we're doing, we change the timeline frequency, and suddenly, the past has been changed incrementally. But if it's been changed, then we're thinking that it's always been that way, right? So, yeah, and this keys into what they call the Mandela effect. Some people think that Mandela died in prison, and others swear that he didn't. And and some people some people are a little more aware that line, when it shifted, it didn't shift for them. There's a part of their mind that remembers it another way because it was another way, and now it's this way.
Right.
So
that just, my mind spins and goes into a loop-de-loop, and my brain breaks at that point.
Right.
But no, it feels like we're near a closure point on this. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, let me see. All of this really, we're talking about pyramids and Pyramidis Radius and all of these things. It leads us to the understanding that there is a system at work for us. It's in our ballpark. It's intended to circumvent, to transform, to help us move beyond the obstacles that we've created for ourselves through the eons of time, or we co-created. I don't want to be too harsh on us. We co-created. And that element of love, compassion, and forgiveness, they could say, well, they made their bed, let them lie in it. But, that's not the way it works with the higher divine beings. And not only that, to be truthful, we're part of their matrix too, so they recognize that, and they recognize that all has to work together synchronistically. So when we think of ourselves as not being alone, it's not just that the finger of God is reaching down and touching us and blessing us. Certainly, I'm not belittling that. It is a fact in my reality. But there's so many other players that are full of light that we can't even imagine, that are there for us. And yes, it's a rocky road right now. It's been a rocky road in the past in times, but now the thing that's different about now is that we're so, and I said this before on the show, but we're so close to the light principle, the activation, the bringing us at least more into the Pyramidis Radius and then beyond. And when I say close, I can't determine that, but it affects us. It affects history. It affects our present and our future, because the magnetic field, if you want to call it that, maybe that's not the right word, but the field of it is touching us now. When it was back even 50 years ago, we were much further back from that touch. And 50 years isn't that long ago, but the acceleration becomes more and more rapid. Every year it's accelerating 5 times faster than the year before, and then the year before, then the year before. It just keeps accelerating. So 50 years ago is like saying 1,000 years ago in that context. So now we're right up, we can feel the heat. It's right there. The shining is upon us. And that's what makes the difference between the mess we're in right now and the mess we were in during the civil rights movement, or way back in the medieval time, the Black Plague and all of that. You know, we're right now, we're in the blessing field. And we have to keep that in our hearts and minds. So that's my final statement for today.
I'm going to remember that phrase, the blessing field. And let's just remember that that's where we live. That's our address, as it were. All right, thank you all for joining us, and be well, be safe. God bless. Bye for now.